Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet meeting this evening. Just the standard announcement to begin with. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, therefore if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the side of the room. Please exit through the reception and meet in the War Memorial Park. The meeting this evening is being webcast live on the internet and will be available to view on YouTube after the meeting. Please check with our officers for confirmation of that and any links required. In terms of mobile telephones, could you please turn them on to silent or turn them off completely? Now, as you can tell from my voice this evening, I'm going to attempt to get through this evening without coughing or generally losing my voice, but I will do my best this evening to get through that. Going through the agenda to begin with, apologies for absence. I have one apology for absence this evening, which is Councillor Mackay. Declarations of interest, item 2. I have none. Does anybody else have any declarations of interest this evening? None. Item number 3 is urgent matters. I understand there is one urgent matter. Councillor Kuzneczka.
Thank you very much, Paul. We've learnt over the past few years how important our parks and green spaces are for our physical and mental well-being. I use these places a lot, both by myself and with my family, and I believe that everybody in our borough should have the opportunity to do the same. The cost of living crisis, as we all know, means that household budgets across the borough are under pressure. For some families, the cost of parking in places like Eastrock Park can be prohibitive. They simply can't afford to park there and go there. This is wrong, which is why I propose that we scrap the car parking charges at Eastrock Park and that we scrap them immediately ahead of the start of the school summer holidays later on this week. There's a financial cost, of course, to doing this. Initial income data indicate that parking revenue from Eastrock Park will be about £30,000 this financial year. So we will lose that, and we will need to repay the £10,600 that residents and businesses have paid for season tickets. However, I believe it will be worth it. So I propose to Cabinet that we make that decision this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on that item? Laura.
Thank you. I think it's wonderful news. I'm absolutely delighted that we've taken this decision as a Cabinet. I think it's fabulous. I remember being part of the group of people with Councillor Paul Basham and Councillor Harvey that we walked around the park and getting a petition. I think it was, I'm not sure, but it was, I think, about 700 people that signed the petition. And those people that really like that park and that were talking about struggling to afford that. And I think it's what we're saying to people, that we're giving back the parks to the people, that, you know, that the cost of that charge was going to prohibit some people from using it. And this is saying these parks belong to you and we can't make money out of these parks. So I think it is fabulous news and great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Anybody else who wishes to speak? Thank you. That decision is a decision that we've made and that's been announced. And thank you very much. Urgent matters. Moving on to the rest of the agenda, item 4 are the minutes of the meetings previously held by the Cabinet previously. Obviously, this was the Cabinet preceding our administration. So these two sets of minutes are relating to the meeting on the 7th of March and the meeting on the 28th of February. Can I start with the meeting on the 28th of February? Are there any comments or any matters arising that flow from those? And do I have permission to sign those minutes off? No? Happy for me to sign those minutes? I shall do so. And again, the 7th of March meeting. Anybody have any matters arising? No. And I shall sign those minutes as a record of the meeting held on the 7th of March. Thank you, colleagues. We now have 3 motions to consider under item 5. A motion on fuel poverty, the motion on community asset transfer policy, and the motion on child poverty in Basingstoke. Can I start with the motion on fuel poverty? This motion was presented and approved by full council and is before us this evening to decide what we propose to do about it. Just to say for my own purposes, there are 2 bullet points at the end of the motion that relate to the council leader, requesting that the council leader write to HM Treasury asking for adequate funding to upgrade homes, and I will do this, I shall action that. And the second bullet point was to request that the council leader applies for the council to become a member of the End Fuel Poverty Coalition. Again, with the motion being passed by full council, I'm happy to do that and will do so. The other elements of the motion are there set out before us. Does anybody wish to speak on those? Laura.
Thank you. I'd ask that what I'd like us to do is to consider this motion in tandem with the motion on child poverty. And what I'd like us to consider is actually setting up an anti-poverty strategy as a borough, and that we ask officers to go away and do a piece of work to look at that. I think I think there's similarities in relation to a lot of this. I think there are aspects to that, but I think what we should do is get them to go away, do a piece of work, come back, and present that back through the cabinet process. I think that in relation to what the child poverty motion, we have a local, we have the local children's partnership that we fund. There's lots of aspects in relation to both of these that we're doing. Speaking to BVA today, we have they host on behalf of the council the local children's partnership. There's 17 members that go along to that. I've asked that I go along to that meeting, possibly with Councillor John Mackay, but what I also think we should do is, and I've asked them of this, is whether they would come in and give a presentation to all members on that partnership and what they're doing, the work that they're doing, and they've agreed to that and they're very happy to do that. So I think that we should do that. I think that we have within the council different groups. We have a group within Basingstoke and Dean, that a cost of living working group here, and they can pick up a lot of this, but it is also a policy area. But I think it's for the officers to go away and decide how they want to take this on. I think it links to Chris's work in relation to the end of fuel poverty. It links to, the climate change, and what aspects of this you may want to pick up. I'd be happy to hear people's thoughts on this, and whether this is a good way of taking these two motions. I really welcome them. I think it's wonderful, and I think it's an opportunity.
Thank you, Laura. Andy.
Yeah, I would echo that. We are fortunate enough to live in an affluent part of one of the world's most affluent countries, and yet we have families that are forced to choose between heating and food, or food for themselves as the adults, food for children, and that's not wrong. That's wrong. We need to put that right. We've got an opportunity to do that as this administration. And I think it's important that we take this forward and use whatever tools we have at our disposal to do that. I remember both of these motions being at full council. They were both passed unanimously. So I think we have an obligation as a local authority to take them forward, and combining them into a single anti-poverty strategy makes a lot of sense to me. So I fully support that objective.
Anybody else? Laura, you just wanted to come back for a quick.
So I was just going to say, in relation to also the child poverty strategy, in relation to that motion, it talks about the family hubs in relation to community centres. We've got the 23 community centres that we have that are all independently managed by independent bodies, but I think they are a resource, and we do need to look at that and what they're doing and what they could do more. But it links to this piece of work, and it links to what our partners are already doing. And talking to BVA, they're doing a lot of this today already, but there's more that we can do. So let's see what we can do and embrace it, and then look at what other services we can deliver and what other things we can do as a borough to take this forward.
That's brilliant. I think from the perspective of the debate that we had at full council, lots of members from all groups made very important points about the issues that concern them and their wards, and also the generality in terms of what the council has done in regard to both child poverty but also fuel poverty. It was a very important debate, both of them were. So I think in terms of us taking them forward, those motions ask the cabinet to take action, and that's definitely what we intend to do. I get the distinct feeling that is exactly what we intend to do. The question is the outcomes and the actions of those. I also note in the child poverty motion there is a request here to lobby the county council in regard to having no cuts to children's services. I think that's important. It also related to young adults and the cuts to their services as well. I'm conscious of those proposals by the county council in their current budget proposals. So I think there's a lot of work here, and I will raise that with the county council leader because it's appropriate that we do so. But in terms of us taking it forward, colleagues, are we content to say that both the end fuel poverty motion and the child poverty motion should go forward with the actions for us to take as Cabinet, working through them into an anti-poverty strategy in the way that Councillor James has described? Are we comfortable with that way forward? Thank you. The remaining motion to consider this evening is item 6, which is community asset transfer policy. This was a motion again brought to full council that was supported and asks us specifically to draw up a capped policy which can be reviewed by CEP within the next 6 months. So if we make this decision this evening, we will then look to do that in terms of policy and bring that to CEP within 6 months of the decision being taken this evening as Cabinet if we adopt the motion and agree to the motion. So do I have any speakers to the motion before us this evening? Are we agreed to do that as a course of action? Agreed. Okay, then that is what we shall do. So this council has requested Cabinet to draw up a cap policy. We shall do that, and it can be then reviewed by CEP within the next 6 months, and that's fair as the motion asks us to do so. So that takes care of item 7, 5, 6 and 7, and brings us to item 8, which is the first substantive report on the agenda this evening, which is the capital programme outturn for 2022-23. And note the report is for noting because it is to go before full council. And Councillor James, as co-leader, this is your report. Would you like to introduce it?
Well, in terms of being my report, obviously this relates back to the last financial year ending on the 31st of March. The outturn is £3.155 million underspend. That's basically down to slippage. It's a feature we see and have seen for many years on the capital reports, capital outturn reports. Obviously there's various reasons for that, all detailed within the paper. It's a situation we're hoping to correct, but it is very difficult, generally actually getting staffing and contractors to do stuff. But the proposal will be for full council to effectively passport that money back into next year's budget so that the works that we planned can be delivered, albeit a little bit later than we hoped.
Thank you, Gavin. Anybody else who would like to make a contribution towards that? No? I'm conscious that the decision is before us to note and that it goes to full council, so I take it that we're happy to note the report that's in front of us and it will go to full council at the next meeting. Okay. That brings us to item 9, which is the revenue outturn report. Same process again. It is obviously for the previous year, it's the co-leader's report, and it's for noting to go to full council again.
Yes, this comes up to a positive variance. I'm always concerned about using the word positive variance, but it's 3.67 million, effectively underspend. Various reasons for that. In fact, when we say underspend, it's a little bit different. The big items are 1 million underspent on staff. Unfortunately, we have a number of vacancies we're struggling to fill, so obviously that's money we'd rather have spent on the staff than actually have left over. We've also got some money that came from the government via the county council. That's in relation to support provided to the Ukraine resettlement scheme. As always, with anything that comes through from government through county, you're never quite sure when you're going to get it. And unfortunately, fortunately for us, it arrived a few weeks before the end of the financial year. The money has been spent, the service has been provided, but it wasn't included in the original budget because we weren't certain when the money would arrive and how much it would be. There are a few other items on there that sort of amount to underspends, but there's a thing around pensions, and also the other bit of money we really didn't want was there's been a sort of rebate from Serco because the contract we have with them means if the service isn't provided effectively, they do pay back for some of that. Again, we'd much rather the service had been provided, and I'm sure Serco feel the same way, generally down to staffing. So those are the underspends. The proposal for full council to approve will be that money will be put into the medium-term financial strategy reserve to be used for future years. £500,000 will be put into a separate waste reserve. As you know, our waste contract is coming to an end in 2026, and some work needs to be undertaken to prepare to how we go beyond that in terms of waste collection services. So that'll be a proposal before full council.
Does anybody else wish to make any contribution? Okay. I just want to say thank you to the officers because both of those reports have taken a tremendous amount of work to put together, and I'm conscious that they will go before full council, but can I thank our officer team for pulling them together. I'm also conscious both of the reports relate to the previous year and relate to all the work that was done, and I know we have a significant group of councillors sat in the audience, So you will recognise these figures and you will recognise the reports. But they are going to go to full council at the next meeting for approval, and it's for full council to approve them, but we note them this evening. So thank you for that, colleagues. I now need to move to an item on the agenda, item 11, where we will exclude the public and turn off the webcam. So I now need to read this to ask you, in order to do that we do that. To agree that, I need to read this out, and then we as a cabinet need to agree the process. So that pursuant to section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that the public interest of maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing it, and therefore that the exempt information is likely to be disclosed as defined in the appropriate paragraph of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that is largely because of commercial interests, and we need to be aware of those, and the borough's interests in making the decision that is before us under item 11. So I would like to ask the Cabinet to agree that we go into confidential session and turn off the webcast for this purpose. When we turn the webcasting back on, we will then confirm the decision that we've debated and decided. Do I have agreement to do so?